since we submitted our last application, and here we are again together. But I wanted to note some of the shifts that we are making this year, and that you'll hear about throughout the conversation. We have a couple people that are still hopping on. So in communities across the country, the NOFO process has traditionally been sort of a very competitive process. And just by way of the national competition, we are sort of pitting projects against each other, and there's winners and there's losers, and we're making funding decisions and using data in more of a punitive way, right? That's sort of what has rolled out across the country in terms of the NOFO process. We are trying to make a marked sort of shift in how we roll out the NOFO among our renewal projects towards really the culture that we're trying to set across the community and build together, that I see every day among your agencies, and what we're building within the lead agency, which is establishing a learning culture where we are using data and information to create a better community-wide response to homelessness and to learn about how we can implement better improvement strategies and provide backbone support to realize some of those strategies in partnership, right? So the shift that we're making is, how do we use the NOFO process as really a more of a transformative process where we are centering capacity building and centering technical assistance. And the way that we are doing that is all of the things that you're going to hear about today. And I don't want to give too much away, but I do want to say the way that we are doing that is by making sure that this year we are using a scorecard really as an indicator to be able to target training opportunities, target capacity building, to co-design performance improvement plans with individual projects. So making a shift away from using the scorecard this year as an opportunity to decide who doesn't get funded or doesn't get placed in tier 2, and instead to say, let's look at data, performance data collaboratively, and use that information to jointly plan on how we can support overall performance improvement among this strong base of renewal projects that we have. So that's just some framing for the conversation today. We just really appreciate everyone's partnership year after year in just, being really the strong backbone of our housing system and our homeless response system. And we're excited to see all of you coming back this year to partner with us. And on that note, I'm going to pass it to Trudy to talk a little bit about what this year's NOFO process is going to look like for renewal projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to get my screen shared. And while I do that, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Trudy Hernandez. I'm the Director of Performance Management here at Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance. Sarah did a really great job at welcoming you, but I also want to say welcome to the fiscal year 2022 COC program orientation for renewal projects. Please be reminded that this is the orientation only for projects that are eligible for renewal through the COC NOFO. We will be holding a separate session for any new projects once HUD releases that NOFO in the coming months. We expect it to be anytime between now and potentially August. So our agenda today is pretty full. We're going to start with a quick review and level setting of what the COC program is and a quick overview of what the funding competition is and what that process looks like. We really want to kind of do that so that for anyone who is new in your positions, who may have not gone through this process in the past, you'll have a good firm understanding of what this looks like and why we do it. We will then go into a recap of the history of our community's success in the NOFO process and provide some insight into last year's competition prior to discussing this year's local competition process for those renewal projects. For the sake of time, we are going to ask that all questions be submitted through the chat box. We're hoping to get through the information in time to have a quick Q&A at the end. But if we're not able to get to everyone's questions, we will be creating a FAQ, frequently asked questions document which will be made available on our NOFO page on the MDHA website. We also have a few MDHA staff ready to answer some of those questions as they come through the chat, so feel free to ask your questions as you think of them. So the Continuum of Care, or COC, is the collective networks, institutions, and organizations that provide housing and services to people experiencing a housing crisis. You're going to hear me say COC interchangeably in two main ways. And so the first way that you'll hear me talk about the COC is to describe the COC program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, more commonly known as HUD. We will focus a lot more on what the COC program is in the coming slides as we go through today, since you all are renewing funding through this program. But I also want to kind of clarify that second use of the word COC, which is really used to describe the structure required to be in place in a local community in order to access those program funds. When we talk about the structure of the COC, what we mean is that we're talking about the group of people from all of these relevant organizations within our geographic area of Dallas and Collin counties that is required to carry out the duties of the COC program, which is defined in the COC program interim role. That includes to appoint the COC board, the HMIS lead agency, and the collaborative applicant to assist with all of those responsibilities that HUD says the COC has. In our community, MDHA has been assigned those responsibilities. The Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing Act of 2009, which you've probably heard referenced as the HARTH Act, amended the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act and formed the Continuum of Care program as we know it now. The COC program is really designed to assist both sheltered and unsheltered people experiencing homelessness by providing the housing and services needed to move into permanent and stable housing. The goals of the COC program are pretty straightforward, and you'll see them listed on the screen. The first one is to promote a community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness. Really putting a focus on viewing the local homeless response as a coordinated system of homeless assistance options, as opposed to separate programs and funding sources that operate independently in a community. So we're really looking at getting rid of those siloed approaches that have occurred in our homeless responses for as long as most of us can remember, I'm sure. The second goal is to provide funding for those projects working to rehouse persons experiencing homelessness, while also minimizing the trauma and dislocation that has been caused by their homelessness. The third goal is promoting access and effective use of mainstream programs. One of the things that we always see in our collaborative application is that HUD always asks us how we're working with different systems and programs out of the COC program to really make that measurable impact on the population that we're serving. And then the last goal of the COC program is to optimize self-sufficiency among those persons experiencing homelessness by giving them those resources and support that they need to thrive. When we think about that focus on communities being a coordinated system, the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act also established a set of selection criteria for HUD to use in awarding the COC funding. And part of that is requiring that COCs report their system level performance measures and their progress over time to show how the community is working together with those various funding sources and different approaches to ending homelessness. HUD uses the system performance information as a competitive element in its COC competition, as well as using it to gauge the state of the homeless response system nationally. This is why you'll really hear us talk about and put so much effort into these particular set of performance measures. So I'm sure most of you guys have heard us talk at great lengths about the length of time homeless, returns to homelessness, all of those others that are here listed on the screen. The COC funding competition provides funding for homelessness-related work, and it's distributed on an annual basis through a release of Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. For those of you that have been doing this for a while, know that last year was the first year that we've called it NOFO instead of NOFA, which is the Notice of Funding Availability. So you'll hear me say NOFA, just know that we're talking about the same thing. So that release of the NOFA for the COC competition provides information on specific types of projects that can be funded through the program, along with any information regarding HUD's priorities for the year. Only one application may be submitted on behalf of the community, and it must be submitted by that designated collaborative applicant. And as I mentioned earlier, MDHA has been selected as that collaborative applicant and responsible for the submission for our community each year. In order for projects to be funded through the program, they must go through this two-step approval process. So HUD expects that each COC hold a local competition for available funding. In that local competition, COCs are directed to review and rank both new and renewal projects in a two-tier system. The NOFO will define what Tier 1 and Tier 2 are, but usually Tier 1 will be equal to 100% of our COC's annual renewal demand, or ARD, and then Tier 2 is usually any bonus funding that can be used to fund additional projects. Typically, all the projects that are in Tier 1 will be funded, while Tier 2 must compete nationally for that limited funding, and so there's not a guarantee that projects within Tier 2 will be funded each year. Through the local competition, HUD encourages communities to look at individual and overall performance, the alignment to the COC priorities, and then cost effectiveness of programs. So once the local competition has ended and the application has been submitted, HUD will then further review each application to ensure that it meets that eligibility and threshold requirement as defined in the NOFA, and then they'll be able to make those decisions on who they're able to fund within Tier 2. So the overall application is comprised of the collaborative application and individual project applications. The collaborative application encompasses everything that the COC does and produces year-round. This is where we, as MDHA, will answer questions regarding the system performance measures, how we collaborate with other systems. More recently, we've answered questions about how we've addressed COVID-19 in our community. And then really each year we just kind of look to see what is HUD wanting to know about our community this year. And then those individual project applications are written by you all and explain the details of the specific program that's being submitted for funding. It's really important to remember that MDHA is not the funder, and that each of you and each of your individual projects will have executed grant agreements directly with HUD. After submission, HUD reviews all the COC applications and scores them, and then HUD also reviews those individual project applications for those different quality and threshold requirements. Here is the scoring breakdown from the past 5 years. You all will have access to the slide deck after today's presentation, so I'm not going to dig into the full table and compare our COC to the national scoring, but I do want to draw your attention to our local scoring and how those compare over the years. So we, of course, didn't have a competition in 2020 due to the pandemic, but you can see a dramatic increase in our score for last year over what was a very low score in 2019. To me, this feels like a really huge step in the right direction, both for increasing our chances of gaining more funding through these competitions each year, but also it really shines a positive light on the transformation that has occurred in our community since 2019. Through the fiscal year 2021 competition, we were able to secure 23 renewal grants, including our CAS, COC, and HMIS grants. And we were also able to expand an existing PSH program and add a new PSH program to our community. With this, we were able to bring our annual renewal demand up to just under $19 million, which is really kind of the minimum of what we expect to be awarded through this year's competition. The programs listed here are all of those that are eligible for renewal through this year's competition. So hopefully you see your organization and your program listed. Otherwise, we will invite you to our new program orientation that we'll have once the NOFA funding is announced for this year. Before we move into the local competition information for this year, have there been any questions that have come up in the chat box that our MDHA staff feel like we need to discuss before moving on?
Nothing yet.
All right, perfect. Just a reminder, feel free to put those questions in the chat box and we'll come back to them periodically. All right, so congratulations to all of you that were awarded funding last year. Last year was really the first year that we attempted separating the new and renewal process, and we received some really great feedback overall in that process. So we're going to try it out again. And this really gives you all the opportunity to focus on the local application and scorecard separate from your submission and eSNAPs that have historically all been done at the same time and really with a short turnaround time. So hopefully this takes away some of that stress from you all as you prepare for this process. This should not be the first time that you guys are seeing this timeline. This was sent out with the initial announcement last Wednesday. So hopefully you all know that the applications and data will be due on June 10th. Today's the orientation, and you will have the opportunity next week to meet with our HMIS team on Wednesday from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. to assist with data cleanup and questions regarding the data being used in the scorecard. Once those scorecards have been filled, you will have until June 22nd to provide any comments on the scorecard. These comments will be shared with the IRC to really help them and assist them in making those renewal decisions. We will continue to edit and add to this timeline as we have new information. Once this year's NOFA has been announced, we will be connecting with you all again to get those project applications submitted in eSNAPs. I will say a huge piece of HUD's debrief from last year's NOFA, which they held a couple of weeks ago, was how communities really should be paying more attention to those individual project applications to ensure that those are as strong as the collaborative applications being submitted. So we plan on holding a TA session or training on grant writing at the same time so that you guys will be able to attend along with the new projects to help prepare to write those narratives.
Trudy, can you talk about what decisions the IRC is making?
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but Sarah did a great job of kind of introducing this earlier, just talking about how we're really looking at using those scorecards to be able to prioritize training and technical assistance. So the reallocation policy that we have put in place has really stated that for this first year, it's kind of a pilot year of seeing where we stand as a community and being able to target those areas that need improvement. So with the reallocation policy, it basically says that we will be funding and protecting our renewal projects and creating a year-long learning process to help increase that opportunity. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Sarah?
No, I just wanted to reiterate that, yeah, the scorecard is being used this year as an opportunity for you all to comment on your performance in relation to that scorecard and the kind of community thresholds that have been set out based on looking at how this base of projects has performed over the last year. So it gives you all the ability to comment on that and comment on your performance, and it helps us determine sort of which projects we can kind of co-design performance improvement plans with to support increasing performance in areas that projects might be struggling with based on based on where that's indicated in the scorecard results. So.
Awesome, thank you. So when we think about the past couple of years, I'm sure most of us can really see the significant transformation that we've gone through. We've been able to restructure our governance, which has given us the opportunity to bring in some really brilliant people to oversee our continuum, as well as the capacity to strengthen MDHA as the backbone organization. As we closed out last year's competition, there was a ton of communication about performance and how HUD focuses on those high-performing programs and communities. And our leaders rightfully asked a few questions. The first question was, how do we become a high-performing community if we aren't focused on the performance? And then the second question was, are we doing everything possible and needed to strengthen our system? And so those two questions have really stuck with me and the team at MDHA for the past year, and we've really done the work to engage the community through those various work groups to begin looking at performance and how we can improve that current status. I included this picture because when I think about our COC programs, this is what I envision, that each existing program that we have is holding our system together. It's a constant state of being able to serve those individuals and families in our community. And if you remove any one of those pieces, the rest of the chain is either going to fall apart, separate, or at a minimum, it's not going to be as strong as it was with that piece in place. So that's kind of how I picture our system currently. The other thing that we know about chains is that they do rust without the proper protection and care, and those chains do have the ability to kind of snap and break with the weight of what it's holding. And so we kind of have to find the middle ground and find the answer of how do we strengthen what we have and protect what we have. So I believe that it's through the provision of that, attention and care needed to make the lasting impacts. And so that's really how we've kind of structured this year's competition to be able to not take pieces away, but to provide the care and attention needed to make those impacts. I know that's kind of an abstract vision. That's how my brain works. So let's dig into a little bit more of what that means for the local renewal process this year. We understand that there is some historical trauma when it comes to the COC NOFA in our community, and that in the past, this competition has had a feeling of a lot of fear attached because of the amount of control taken and kind of lack of transparency in the process. So I know it's going to take some time to get used to a new way of operating, but I really do hope that you start to feel this collaborative approach to not only our COC program, but each program within our continuum. These are the three themes that I feel like our local renewal process this year is kind of taking front and center. So first, as mentioned before, the COC board has approved that reallocation policy that protects our existing projects from being blindsided with any reallocation decisions. We know that you guys, like I said, are that chain holding us together, and we have no desire to remove your link unless you have identified the lack of capacity or the lack of want to continue to manage that grant. And then second, we know that we must evaluate performance often, starting with this year's renewal project, but not project scorecard, but not stopping there, but being able to really look at it year round and think about how we improve throughout the year and not just this one time of year when we are looking for funding. I would love to give the renewal project scorecard a different name because of the pressure that we all feel when we feel like we're being graded on our performance. So you all will notice that this year's scorecard has taken away the historical point system that we have used in the past. The point system really created an us against them mentality, which in my opinion, kind of creates this environment where we're pitting the organizations against each other to compete for the funding, rather than creating an environment where we can focus on each individual program and the improvements that can be made to strengthen our entire community. The other piece of feedback that we have heard over and over is that programs felt that through that annual scorecard that they were being held to some unrealistic standards. So I want to spend just a minute talking about how we set the thresholds on the scorecard this year. Most, if not all of you, have representation on either our rapid rehousing or permanent supportive work groups. Some of you who are funded for both have representation on both of those work groups. So hopefully you all know that over the past year, we have been able to standardize those program models for both of these interventions. And within the creation of those program models, the groups had the opportunity to identify specific performance measures that should be tracked along with setting the goals for those measures. So as a community, we were able to say, these are the goals, or these are the measures that are important to us, and these are the goals that we want every single rapid rehousing or every single PSH program to be able to meet over the next few years. So when you look at the scorecard, you'll see that each of the components included on the performance section of the scorecard came from those program models. So I'm hoping that these are not new to you. And when we created this, we also recognized that it wouldn't be fair to set thresholds based on those goals, knowing that our community has not yet met them. And so we used the real data that we have currently to set those thresholds. So we pulled several different reports. We pulled reports for all of rapid rehousing programs. We pulled reports for all of permanent supportive programs. And then we averaged those out and found common ground between both interventions to be able to set those thresholds. We have no expectation that each and every program will meet threshold in every single component. And that's okay, because like I said, we're not looking to remove any of you. Instead, these scorecards are giving us that opportunity to learn and grow by identifying and targeting that technical assistance, capacity building, training, whatever it may be that is needed to be able to improve those areas. It also helps us to understand if we need to focus on specific areas or populations that are being served in our community, and whether or not any shifts should be made in those goals. So I know everyone probably came to this hoping to know all of the magic answers on how to be successful through this process and to get all of the credit that you all deserve for the hard work that you're doing and that you have done over the past year. So I don't have all of the magic answers, but I do have the easiest answer to help go through this process, which is to really make sure that your data is complete and accurate. From today, you have 10 more days to work with your teams to correct or add any missing data that would affect the overall picture of what your program's doing. So you all can run your own reports to see where you stand on the scorecard today, and then make those adjustments to the data as needed to be accurate for when we run it after June 10th. From my almost 10 years of working in this field, I can almost guarantee that the income component will be a headache for most of your programs, and not because your clients aren't increasing their income, but because your case managers are not recording the data in HMIS once they learn that their clients have gained employment or received SSI. So this is kind of my plea to you all to have these conversations often, not just at scorecard time, to make sure that these update assessments are being completed in real time, and that anytime we pull those reports that we're getting a clear picture of all of the good things that your program's doing. And then I will also say that this is kind of my promise that this will not be the last time that you hear from me personally and my team between now and next year regarding those performance measures and really looking at where we are throughout the year. If you're needing assistance in running those reports, we do have several cheat sheets for running both the APR and data quality reports on our website that walks you through that process. You're welcome to submit SpiceWorks tickets to get assistance from our HMIS team. And then also remind you that we will have those office hours with the HMIS team so that you can get some real time and face-to-face time with our HMIS team to make those corrections. I also want to remind you that we have a COC NOFO page on our website that will stay updated throughout both the new and renewal process. That will include all of the updated timelines, the frequently asked questions document that we'll be putting together after today's call, and any other resources that we can make available to you guys to make this process as easy and seamless as possible. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Ray. Ray's going to discuss Amplifund, which is the software that we're using to submit the intent to renew applications. So Ray, if you don't mind taking over from here.
Hey, Trudy, before we move on, can you talk a little bit, and I know that you mentioned this, but can you just reiterate again for folks how the performance improvement plans will be applied and what, how those will impact next year's NOFO process?
Yeah, so the reallocation policy will basically allow the IRC to look at those scorecards and say, yes, we are renewing this program without conditions, meaning we are moving forward through the process. And then the second way that they'll be moved through is that they are being renewed with conditions, and that condition will be to think about quality improvement plans for the coming year. And so we will be using those quality improvement plans or performance improvement plans to target that training and technical assistance to each project that is needing it. And then over time, we will be making sure that that improvement is happening. If for whatever reason we're not able to get the improvement that we are wanting to see or need to see, then the IRC will be able to take further action in next year's NOFA, but we will be reevaluating throughout the year.
So just so people are clear, those performance improvement plans then are jointly created with your projects to set up the objectives of those performance improvement plans. We will together be tracking that throughout the year. In next year's NOFA process, if the objectives aren't met, then the IRC has the discretion to be able to use that information in decision-making on projects next year, whether that means projects are getting funded again, but with conditions, projects are automatically renewed, or if there is still very serious concerns about the extent to which that project participated and met the objectives of the performance improvement plan, then the IRC has discretion not to renew a project. So I think the idea is that we want that to be sort of a collaborative process throughout the year where based on the performance results, that performance improvement plan is jointly created with you all. That's monitored together. There's opportunities for training, technical assistance, capacity building throughout the year so that there's no surprises going into next year. What was the other thing I was going to mention on that? I can't remember right now, so we can move on until I remember. And we still don't have any questions in the chat. So Ray, do you want to take it over and just remember folks, if you do have questions. Oh, hi, Daniel.
Hi, how are you, Sarah?
Hey.
So one quick question. First off, I want to say I really like the way you guys are laying this out as kind of an ongoing conversation to be able to have adequate ramp up time for any adjustments that get made in regards to funding cycle. One of the things I guess that I would be requesting is that you know, to be able to get all that information enough time. For example, like if there's a decrease in funding but it's not an elimination of program, sometimes, you know, internally we have to make decisions on whether or not it makes sense, you know, fiscally to be able to operate the program. So to be able to get kind of information in advance with time to be able to make those decisions is really helpful. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. The other thing, Yeah, so I guess what you're saying, Daniel, is like just thinking about the cycle of these decisions. And Daniel, before you hopped on, I think what we were talking about is this year, we really want to use this process to make sure that we are, like, scorecards are really being used to be able to target capacity building and to jointly create performance improvement plans with projects. As we move into next year, the objective is still to center capacity building and to strengthen our base of projects. And so we really want that to be a collaborative process with projects in terms of creating performance improvement plans and tracking people's ability to meet the objectives of those performance improvement plans jointly with projects. But I guess what you're saying is as we move into next year's process, and the IRC is using that information to make determinations about funding, we want to make sure that that cycle happens early enough in the year so that there's plenty of time to do planning if it turns out that a project would receive less funding.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The other thing I wanted to note is the other opportunity that we're giving projects this year is to be able to provide comment on the results. That comment period can also be used to really demonstrate why a certain performance threshold wasn't met. And I think that also gives us good insight as a lead agency as to what's happening on the ground and can then help us refine the scorecard for next year if we are getting consistent feedback from people about a particular reason why projects would be scoring a certain way. For example, if there's a population being served that we've heard feedback about, for example, the length of time that it takes to move families into households versus individuals, and for a variety of reasons that sometimes larger families are harder to serve. And we want to make sure that we're accounting for differences in population. This year, the way that we did that was through what Trudy described, which is looking at just our base of projects and the averages across our base of projects and the kind of insights that we've gathered through work groups and looking at performance benchmarks. But again, I think this process also makes sure that there aren't any surprises on the scorecard. And if there's particular things that we should be thinking about as we create next year's scorecard, we can gather and leverage the insights that you all provide in your comments to be able to do that and inform the IRC of that. There is another question. Yolanda.
Hey, good morning. Question.
Hi.
Have we listed the priorities yet for the tiers? What is the COC's priority for this year?
So the annual priorities for the NOFA process are usually released after the NOFA is released so that they're aligned. And those priorities would really be reflecting ranking priorities to support IRC in making funding decisions about new projects. So HUD hasn't released their NOFA, so the board won't be releasing funding priorities for the NOFA until that comes out.
Thank you.
I thought I saw another question. There's a couple in the chat. Let's see here.
I see one related to brand new projects. So we were able to award one new project from last year. And the reallocation policy basically says that all new projects for the first year will be automatically renewed because we do know we're either not going to have the data to support any type of decisions to be made on that program. And also we know there's a ramp up period that that takes to get to a point of reflecting any real performance. So to answer that question, new projects will be auto-renewed for their first year.
And then I see another question about expansion on when they're supposed to actually turn in the stuff for the expansion.
Perfect. So the way that HUD looks at expansion projects is they actually require a new project application be submitted as an expansion. So for those of you that are wanting to expand current projects, we will ask that you stay in touch and stay in the loop about our new project orientation and information once that NOFA is released.
Okay, I think that is it for the questions right now. Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Clay. I am the Director of Grants and Contract Management. If you have applied for one of our Dallas real-time projects, then you have probably used Amplifund before. But for those of you who have not done one of those this year, this will be new to you. If you'd like, you can scan this QR code. It's going to go ahead and take you to the application if you'd like to go through it at the same time with us. If not, that's fine. I have screen prints on our slides right now, so you'll be able to see exactly what that application looks like. It is going to take you to a website called gotomygrants.com, which is part of Amplifund. And from there, you will see this. So if you are brand new to Amplifund and your organization has not created an account, when you get to this page and hit apply, it's going to take you right here. So if you're new, you'll have to register. And then if not, you'll use login for a past registrant. So a big deal about this is that someone from your organization, whoever started the account, is going to be the person that adds new users to that account. So let's say that you are City Square, which is one of our Dallas real-time, then they have to find their admin, and that admin can add additional users in there. And then they also are able to give you rights, all of that. I have no control, meaning MDHA, we can't add people to your organization's account or even see it. So if you're not sure who your admin is, anything like that, then we'll have to go through Amplifund in order to get that information for you. So I would tell everyone to make sure that you try to log in the next couple of days so that if you have any issues getting into your account, you have some time to get that figured out with Amplifund. All right, so this kind of covers a little bit of what I said. There's only one administrator for your organization should do the register, and that administrator will then add users and send an invite to join. All right, there's also instructions on just how to invite users to your organization account. So using this screenshot, that's what we would give to them if they're like, oh, I haven't done it in a while, I'm not sure. These are the steps in order to do that. And it just continues with the information that you put in and the roles that you give them. All right, so now we're going to talk about the application. Just so you know, some of these screenshots are not from this application, they're from old ones. So don't be confused if you see some other information on it. But at the top of the screen, you will see these 5 green buttons: print, help, download, save, and apply. You can download the entire application so that you can look at it, see what you need to gather prior to going in and applying. You can also print out, and if you're printing, it's just printing that one page. It's better to download and then print the whole application as one. And you'll see that there's opportunity details, which is the page that it's on, and then also evaluation and scoring. We don't have that set up for this opportunity, so you don't have to worry about that. Go on. All right, so once you go in and you hit the apply button, this is what the top of the screen will look like. And it already will have check marks for opportunity details and evaluation scoring. Those were just information. And it shows a white dot on the one that you are actually on, and that would be project information. So on that screen, you will just fill out everything that you need to. But really, I just want you to see that bar up top where it has everything for you to be complete. You'll have a check mark in every single one of those circles. Okay, so as you're filling out a page, at the bottom, there's going to be 3 options. You can save, mark as complete, or save and continue. So this kind of tells you what those 3 options are. And what I'll tell you though is that you will not get the check mark until you mark as complete. So even if you save it and continue, or save it and save on the stay on the page, it doesn't actually say that it's complete until you mark it. So just hitting save saves everything on the page and leaves you there. That's just I'm just making sure my stuff is saved there. Save and continue. It will save everything on that page and then move on to the next page of the application, and then mark as complete. It's going to check and make sure that you have everything that's required filled out, and then it will allow you to mark as complete. If it's not, it gives you an error. All right, so one of the pages is going to be application forms, and it will show how many different individual forms you have to click on. So underneath in that table, you'll see all of the different forms that are required for your application. Like I said, these aren't exactly the same as yours. You'll have different names on them. But every single one of those has to show complete in order for that page to be done. There is no mark as complete on the bottom of this page. It happens with each individual form. Go on to the next one. All right, and then at the very end, you'll get to this page and it says that you are about to submit your application. What you'll notice is I told you guys that you had to have a check mark in every single circle in order for it to be ready to submit. So there's a red line right there at the bottom. It says you have forms containing required fields which have not been completed. So because of that, it doesn't actually allow you to submit. It wants you to go back to those pages and figure out which ones need to be marked as complete and get that information in there. You can also download your full application prior to submitting, so that you are able to have that, for your records. All right, so our application sections for this NOFO are opportunity details and evaluation and scoring, which I told you are just information screens. There's nothing that you actually have to fill out on those. You have project information, which is going to include your amount requested and then your primary contact info. And then we have the different application forms, which is detailed information about your project. For this application, you are able to submit multiple applications because some of you have more than one project. So just know that after you submit one, make sure that the name of it is clear with what project you're submitting. And then for your second one, you'll just do everything over again and just make sure you have a different name for that application. Go ahead, Trudy. All right, so just to make sure, in the middle underneath status, it says in progress, complete, or new. So once you click on a form, it will then show in progress. It will not show complete until you've actually marked that individual form as complete. All right, if you need help while you're going through, you can always click the help button. It's going to give you options for Amplifund on where you can get help there. And then there's also my information if you need help with something with navigating. So right here is where it has technical help description. So I will not be able to answer your questions about the scorecard, about, information that you need to put in for any of that. But I can help you with Amplifund if you need that. So not as far as a user account. If you need help with like your user account, getting someone registered, you have to go through Amplifund for that. But if you're just like, I don't know how to navigate through the application, I need some help, then contact me. And usually I'll get on a Teams meeting with you and help you get through that. All right, so some of the key takeaways from Amplifund is one person from your organization has to register as the account administrator first. and then other users can be added. So for all of my people who have already used Amplify before, just make sure that you go to the administrator for your account and, you know, tell them that you need access, or whoever's going to be doing the application, they just need to make sure that they can get back in. You can download the whole application as a PDF prior to filling it out so that you can get all the information you need prior. Application, it does time out after 20 minutes. So I always say that it's very important to save and save often. Within Amplifund, they do give you a little pop-up box that says that it's going to time out to help you. But I just know, like, if I walk away from my computer and come back, you know, later and I'm like, oh man, nothing that I did got saved. So just make sure that you're saving often within the application, and you are not able to submit an incomplete application. So just make sure that all of the forms are marked as completed, and then be sure to use that help button if you have any questions along the way as you're doing your application.
Any questions related to Amplifund? All right, hearing none.
Okay.
All right, so next steps, as a reminder, I'm going to keep saying this timeline so that nobody is shocked or forgets, but next week from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Wednesday, June 8th, we will be holding those HMIS office hours. So any help that you're needing in correcting any data, please, please, please attend that and speak with our HMIS team. Those Amplifund submissions must be submitted by Friday, June 10th by 5 p.m. So make sure you click that submit button before 5 p.m. For the data cleanup, it has the same deadline. For those of you that are HMIS users, please make sure that the information is up to date in HMIS. There's no need for you guys to pull that report and send it to us. We will be pulling that from HMIS after June 10th. For those of you that are DV providers and are required to use that comparable database, we will need a copy of the CSV file for the APR. So if you're needing any help with that, please let us know so that we can assist you in getting that to us before 5 p.m. on June 10th. And then we will be sending out the filled scorecards over the following week. And you will have a comment period of June 17th through the 22nd to be able to add any comments related to your scorecard. Like Sarah said, that's an opportunity for you guys to explain any possible reasons for performance being below threshold, being able to identify plans or actions that you guys already have in place to address those things. And all of those comments will be going to the IRC when we provide those scorecards. So make sure to have those comments into me by 5 p.m. on the 22nd. I'm looking at the chat box right now to see if there's any questions that we missed, but we do have ample time scheduled. So if you guys have additional questions, feel free to unmute and we'll try to address those now. All right, I'm hearing none, so we will give you guys some time back to your day. Like I said, this is being recorded and we will upload this to our NOFO page on the website this afternoon, along with a copy of the slide deck. So if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. There is an option in Amplifund to ask questions regarding the application that will come to me. But if you need to email me directly, feel free to do that. With that, we'll be in touch soon.
Sounded like, was there a question coming in?
I was. I'm sorry. I was
It's okay.
walking and I didn't want to drown your ears out. Um, you said getting all the data and stuff fixed before we submit to the RSC. What date was that?
So the data must be corrected by June 10th. So the same time that the applications are due, all of the data should be turned in as well. And the reporting period that we're using for the scorecards is May 1st of 2021 through April 30th of 2022.
Say it one more time. May 1st.
May 1st, 2021
Okay.
through April 30th of 2022.
And that's where we put our performance scorecard, make sure that data is right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And if we're shifting to a new part, because we've been service mostly, and now we've been doing housing, like enrolling in housing, now to do housing. Is that something I just need to talk to you about?
Yeah, we can talk offline if you'd like. If you want to give
Yeah.
me a call after this.
Okay.
All right, anything
Alright.
else? All right. Have a great one.